But let's talk about how male to female ratio of suicides. It's like males
way higher
are outing themselves far higher than women are. And a lot of people allude that to, well, men just can't express themselves. And I believe there are some truth to that. Welcome to another episode of the Common Podcast, where we speak upon common sense and realize it really isn't that common. Why do men hide their emotions? This is going to be the big umbrella question for today's conversation. We do dive into some subtopics such as, should men actually be sheathing their emotions? What are some pros and cons to that? And what are some effects of highly emotional men in comparison to men who just completely hoard their emotions? As we know, and I think which is the biggest worry of the listeners here listening to this podcast today, is male suicide. As we know, as of today, male suicide is 4 times higher than women's. So should men actually be able to seek an avenue to express their feelings? And where should they do that in a healthy manner? Should they be doing that in the first place? Males expressing themselves, and especially when it comes to emotions, has been demonized, or has it? That's going to be the big question today in this conversation. This topic was actually voted by you all, the listeners, on Instagram. For the new listeners, you can find the Instagram being The Real Common Podcast on Instagram. If you're a new listener, you can find the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and almost anywhere else that you can find your podcast. And that's going to be The Common Podcast. Thank you all for listening. I hope that you all enjoy the podcast just as much as we did recording it. And until next time, we'll catch you all later.
On the track.
Started off with the cheers.
Cheers.
What's going on, my bro? Welcome back. We'll try to get the mic really close this time, because I know the last podcast that I had the judge on, it was kind of bad audio. But anyways,
I heard him fine, I think.
Yeah, I had to pick it up midway.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Anyways, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Common Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about, and this was voted by you all. So for the new listeners, go check out the Real Common Podcast on Instagram, so you can enter in the polls and engage with us on there. If you're new, you can find the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and almost anywhere else that you can find podcasts. But yeah, today's conversation is going to be, why do men hide their emotion? And a kind of a subtopic to that is, should men sheath their emotion? What are the pros and cons, and what are the consequences of men being extremely emotional? And on the opposite side of the spectrum, what happens to them when they hoard it? I think it's generally known that men typically keep their emotions in. We hear the cliches of man up, right? Grow a pair, things along those lines. Like you should man up and be resilient and sheath your emotions. You need to contend with the world, and there is a demand for performance in a male.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? You need to go out there and contend. And I mean, this was brought on to me even when I was a kid. I was a troubled kid early on, and when my parents got divorced, went through a rough patch, and I didn't take it too well. And my grandma actually stepped up, and she was kind of my guardian at the time. Yeah. And I remember, I gave her such a hard time. And when I would cry, in order to get me to stop crying, she had a song. And the song was in a very simple melody. She would just sing over and over again, "Big boys don't cry." And she would say that until I would stop crying. Yeah. And it's funny because when I was a kid, I thought, well, that's just my grandma trying to get me to stop crying. But subconsciously, what that was actually doing was, I was teaching me as a young kid was, men aren't supposed to cry. Yeah. Right. You're supposed to be tough. Yeah. Right. You're supposed to sheath that way you can contend with the world, because in reality, well, we'll talk about all that later on in the conversation, but she was teaching me at a very young age, and I think a lot of us kind of went through that, right? Especially with father figures. For sure, if you had that around. Don't cry. Grow a pair. You need to... Girls, those emotions are for females. That's a feminine trait, is typically what has been pushed on us. But I think that's kind of altering now, and I think what we're seeing a lot on social media is
flipping.
Is men should be more emotional, and they should be able to express this. Now, there are some truth to that, so let's not knock that, and we'll get into that later on in the conversation. But I believe that this conversation's extremely intricate. It's very complex. It's not as simple as just saying, yes, men should just be extremely emotional. And I don't think it's as simple as saying, no, men should be emotionless. I think that there is a lot of things that we're going to talk about. So we're going to be talking about the effects on relationships between males and females. I think when it comes to homosexuality, I don't think we should dab on that because it really kind of confuses this whole dynamic.
Yeah.
At least for this conversation. For me, personally speaking, I'm not, I couldn't speak on that. We're going to be talking about the workforce. How is that going to alter the workforce and then, social life and in the grand scheme of things?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So what do you think? Do you think that agenda has been pushed, at least on you as a kid?
As a kid, I'd have to agree with you. It was like early on, like, men don't cry.
Yeah.
That was one of the big things. I guess maybe that's, I don't know if it's right? Like, I don't know if it's, you're supposed to tell your kid stuff like that, right? I'm not 100% sure it's healthy. We're not therapists here. We don't know how exactly how that affects the psyche. But it does get ingrained in your head. Like,
it does.
100%. Like, even as a little kid, you're thinking to yourself while you're emotional, you're like, oh, I shouldn't be like this. If I want to be more of a man, I can't be like this.
Exactly.
And then as you grow up, it just kind of goes with you pretty much through my whole life. It's not something I don't ever want to be crying in front of someone like that I want to respect me or like take me seriously. Like, that's not something you really.
Well, that's kind of a reason why we admire resilient men, right?
Yeah,
it's
of
because
course.
they're tough and they're able to withstand tough situations.
For sure.
They're able to weather the storm, so to speak, and very high emotional states where catastrophe is hit. It's like we need those tough men in order to hold everything down together. A family member passes away.
Yeah.
Who's going to be able to step up to the plate and set order?
I got a question. When you're talking about this subject, like, what do you think of? Are we talking in terms of like adults or like, let's say, an adolescent, like a teenager? Mm-hmm. What do you think if they are emotional? For me personally, I think I'd give them a pass. I think I'd be like, they're not really fully developed yet, right? But of course, you see trouble signs that maybe he just is too emotional, or he or she obviously we're talking about men.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I wouldn't give it a pass.
You wouldn't give it a pass?
I think that young men should be taught very early on that they need to contend with the world.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, like
for sure.
For me, I think very tough role models were like coaches.
Yeah.
Right. And coaches, at least back when I was in middle school, they were not the nicest person. They didn't really care about your emotions and feelings. It's like, toughen up. You're part of this unit. You've agreed.
Part of a team, yeah.
Right? That you're going to be part of this team and you're going to follow the rules. Regardless of what's going on at home, regardless of you don't feel it, right? So I wouldn't give it a pass. And if anything, I think the adolescence years are crucial for building those type of characteristics of being resilient.
But I agree, but I think parents are very important there too. That parents need to be able to like know what's going on, because I feel like a lot of kids go through stuff and they're emotional, but they don't show that to like their parents, and maybe like maybe what they need is like an intervention from them,
100%,
to actually get them to understand like why it's important to be resilient.
I think a huge part of that is having both parents.
For sure.
In the whole spectrum of things. I think that's important, because let's talk about literally the complete opposite side of the spectrum. We're talking about being tough and resilient, but let's talk about how male to female ratio of suicides. It's like males
way higher
are outing themselves far higher than women are. And a lot of people allude that to, well, men just can't express themselves. And I believe there are some truth to that. I believe so.
Yeah. I would agree.
Because I believe personally that when you hoard things in so much, you build up anxiety and depression. That's what I personally think. That's what I've found. And especially with the people that I've talked to very close, I like to dive deep into conversations personally with people, even off the air. And I think with all the conversations I've had, we've all come to that agreement. It's like, whenever there's something that we have to hide, there is this overwhelming feeling that takes over us, which is anxiety, that it's just hard to live under those type of terms.
For sure.
I know someone that is who is secretly gay, and they're scared to come out because of all the judgment. Right?
Yeah.
And there's just anxiety built up in them currently, and I'm just like, you have to let that out. You know what I mean? Like, that's just something that if you hold it on too long, it could be detrimental to your health.
Yeah.
And, that's
For
the
sure.
most important thing is the health, right?
Yeah.
And they think that they're going to be rejected by different people. And it's just like, well, maybe some are, but I think for the most part, if they really cared for you, they
want to be in your life.
They're going to
be in your life.
regardless. Yeah. And most importantly, they're going to want to see you happy.
For sure. Yeah. 100%.
Right? And I think that goes for male or female. But yeah, I think that's probably the biggest worry of all the listeners right now, of why they think men should express themselves more with their emotions is, well, we don't want to see these guys outing themselves out.
Oh, yeah.
But I think there's a middle. There's a happy middle where men are going to be able to express themselves, but not too much where they fall off of this. I believe that the world works off of a hierarchy. I think I've talked about this on the podcast
There's definitely
before.
hierarchy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's definitely a hierarchy, and I believe in everything.
In everything, yeah.
In everything. I kind of want to do this experiment. I've been looking for a way to integrate it into the podcast, is formulate a group chat with your friends, with a bunch of your guy friends. Whoever gets picked on the most is usually at the bottom of the hierarchy. Okay. They're usually the beta.
Yeah.
The alpha probably gets picked on the least. And it's even more true when they're in a group, right? The wolf pack will pick out the weakling.
It'll settle itself out. Yeah, for sure.
And in in the animal kingdom, they'll probably just end up killing that weak link, right? Is what it ends up happening. But I think that goes with everything. If you're high in emotion, which is a feminine trait, let's not run away from that. High emotion is feminine trait.
Yeah.
You're going to be. That's going to be exploited, I believe, in the real world. So if you're a male 100%. And you're extreme, if other people's words hurt your feelings
and get you riled up,
yeah. Guys are going to, because the thing is, like, when you're a bunch of guys and they say a joke and you react to it,
you lost.
You lost. That signals to the guys like, oh, I'm getting an emotional reaction. Yeah. He's triggered by this.
Yeah.
And so guys are very good at picking that up, and what's going to happen is everybody's going to take rounds on you, and you're going to be known as that guy. The smart thing to do is, one, ignore it, but I think what's even better than that is play along with it. Like,
for sure.
If anything, make fun of yourself in that moment. It's like, and it literally takes the value away from the whole thing.
It diffuses the whole thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's not funny anymore. This guy's doing it to himself.
Yeah.
You're able to reflect that, and I think that's a skill in knowing the whole feminism versus masculinity thing, but I think that's just a huge skill to have, and just communication.
It takes people a long time to learn.
It does.
Being in group chats for since we were kids, you see at first versus now, people that would get affected by jokes on the group chats, right?
Yes.
And at first, it would be a good amount of them and they get mad and they start replying and start saying things like that. And eventually now to we're older, we're in our mid-20s. Some of them still get riled up, but a lot of them already learned just go along with it, or just say whatever.
Yeah.
Just say whatever, make fun of yourself, don't take yourself too seriously, or throw in a random meme that has nothing to do with the conversation. Stupid stuff like that, and it works. Yeah. And it literally diffuses the situation. And I feel like it's like emotional intelligence. You're smart enough not to respond. You're smart enough not to give in to the.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually far more healthier for you to not even engage in that.
Yeah.
If somebody's picking on you online, if you literally just act like if you didn't even see it in the first place, you give no power to that. Honestly, just ignore it.
Yeah.
But it's very hard, and I understand that.
Super.
And I'm not saying that there's not a place in this world for
It's also kind of a new thing because of the internet, and people aren't really used to that. Because before that, you'd have to tell something to that person to their face,
and that takes a lot more guts.
Exactly, because you can catch some fucking hands,
Oh yeah, for sure.
But now, you could post something and someone could just comment, "You're an idiot." It's just I remember back in the day, I used to when I was in early adult teenager, comment and Facebook arguing, like I would actually partake, like not arguing right, but like giving them the energy back and like feeling like anger and stuff towards them. Now, if I post something, someone comments something I don't like, dude, like okay, whatever, like you do you, man.
I totally agree. I remember. Back in 2014, I had a group of friends online, and people online are relentless. Yeah, they're ruthless, and they'll like say anything under the sun. No consequence. They'll talk about your mama. They'll talk about everything, right? And I used to get, my blood used to boil. Like I used to be in the verge of tears. This is back when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, I came to a point. I was like, I'm giving that the power. Right, my feminine energy is actually feeding that flame to where like I am stressing myself out. These guys are literally going to sleep and just not worrying about anything. Right, I'm only stressing myself out. I believe that this is a good example of why you should be careful on where you project your emotions. I had a conversation with somebody, and we talked about. Actually, I'll just say I had a conversation with my wife about this topic maybe last month. So this has been something brewing in my mind for a while now. And I asked her, do you think that men should tell their wives everything? Right? And initially she kind of like, well, yeah, right? Like, I mean, that kind of makes sense. But I don't believe so. Because here's the thing. And females might not like hearing this. But the thing is, females don't even like high emotional men, right, to start with. And we'll get into that when we get into the whole dating dynamics.
Yeah.
But the thing is, there's two things to that. One, females don't really know what men have to contend with when they step into the world, when like the workplace or like even stepping into the gym. Like subconsciously, there is a hierarchy in that too. There's just a lot of things that they just won't understand. And then two, and most importantly, this is what's most importantly, if I came home and complained about every single thing that happened to me out in life, would my wife be comfortable enough to express her feminine side? And would she even feel safe having kids with me if I was on the verge of quitting my job all the time because it was so stressful?
Yeah.
If I don't want to do the chores around the house because it's just too much and I'm tired, right? It's just like, if I'm extremely emotional and I don't like grow a pair, if I don't man up and cut the grass when I'm tired, if I don't, do things, the plumbing around the house, if I don't do all these things, these masculine things, and it never gets done, females are typically not going to be, they're going to either lose interest or they're just not even going to be interested in you at all.
Yeah.
So this is where I think that having multiple avenues of people in your life in order to express your emotions. And I think this is a great example. Like I have a really good friend who's been on the podcast, Saul, and we talk nearly every day.
Yeah.
And even though it's like a short span of time, we kind of like bounce, what we're thinking like on the daily, right? And he is somebody that I'm able to express certain things to, right? But there's some things that I can tell him that I can't tell my wife. But there's something that I can tell my wife that I just necessarily can't tell him because he'll think that I'm weak. Yeah. Right? Because there's a certain level of intimacy when it comes to my wife.
For sure.
That if I tell him, he's just like, oh, that's gay, right? Or that's, the whole typical thing, not to be homophobic or anything like that. But same thing goes with families. Like when you have a brother, which I do, you can tell your brother certain things that you wouldn't be able to tell your dad, right? But you can tell your dad things that you just necessarily couldn't tell your brother. So I think it's very important to know these avenues and know who you can tell and then be able to, use them to your advantage. That way you can be able to express your emotions. I know that's tricky.
No, I mean, everyone does that subconsciously.
Yeah. Yes.
Because every relationship you have, there's kind of like a different... I would say not really a whole personality, but there's a different like kind of type of your personal personality in your specific relationship. When I talk to my brother, I talk different,
Yeah.
Because we have our own little language. I talk to friends, I talk, that language that we speak.
Yeah, for sure. What's interesting is that a lot of people think that's fake.
It's not fake though. Yeah. Everyone does it, but
you'll hear it's like, oh, that person's fake. He's a totally different person at home. It's like, absolutely.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
You have to know. Okay, it's like
my wife laughs whenever she sees when whenever I'm like, okay, look, I'm typing in the group chat like, okay, check out this, like what we're talking about. This is stupid. She's like, you type like an idiot on there. I'm like, well, yeah, I'm talking to a bunch of idiots.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what we do.
Yeah, the way I type to y'all in the chat is
exactly
like improper grammar and like slang. I wouldn't be sending text to my boss like that.
No, hell no.
You know what I mean?
Of course no.
I wouldn't go speak to my grandmas the way I talk to the bros.
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
Some people say it's like, oh, that's fake. It's like, no, you need to have the awareness to know when and where you can do things like that, right?
Yeah, it's like it's a social thing, Obviously, that's probably like something like a person with autism would struggle with because they just can't get social cues and stuff like that. But for normal people, everyone does that. Yeah. It's not fake. It's just to me, it's just a reality. Like that's something I've come to know. Like okay, like the way I'm talking to you right now is not the way I talk to you off the podcast because obviously I don't want to sound like a complete idiot. It's because we both talk to each other kind of dumb, right?
Yeah.
But like I said, there's a time and place for everything. So every relationship has a different personality that you give it, and that's just normal. It's healthy.
Yeah, I think it's genuine. I think you can definitely tell when somebody's being disingenuine. It doesn't have to be the same person all the time.
Yeah, you small talk and talk about things you both really don't care about. Yeah, we both know people like that for sure.
For sure.
We know the fake.
Yeah. Let's talk about the dating dynamic of this whole masculinity and femininity thing. I think it's super interesting because of what I think is going on right now is that the agenda is being pushed that, I mean, what do you hear? What do you see females posting, right? It's women should be independent, resilient, and they should be able to hold their own, right? Yeah. Those are masculine traits. And what we're seeing on the opposite side of the spectrum is men should be in tune with their emotions
and vulnerable.
Right? They should be able to express these feelings. So what we're seeing here is that women should be more masculine and men should be more feminine, which is very odd because that's against our nature.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Instead of empowering men to be masculine, that way women can express their feminism or femininity. We're swapping it. We're trying to swap it. Right. And it's kind of crazy because women will say this, but they'll be attracted to the dark triad guy, the guy that really isn't in tune with their emotions, the guy that, I mean, we hear the cliche all the time. It's like girls like bad guys.
And for sure.
That's kind of like a surface level thing. There's some truth to that, right? That's very surface level, but that's the truth. Women don't like feminine trait just as much. Even though they claim they want a high emotional man to express their feelings, they don't want that. They really don't.
It's definitely, I feel like it definitely is a turnoff for them. Like
100%.
If initially this guy's just straight up simping, that's a no.
It's not. I had a conversation with a female before hopping on the show. She was supposed to be on the show, so shout out to you. I know you're listening. And I asked her to be honest with yourself, right? If a male was head over heels for you and telling you exactly what you wanted to hear, right? I'm being sarcastic for the listeners. That he'll do anything for you. He would give you a life that you've always wanted, and he will take care of you, he'll support you, and you wouldn't have to worry about, all this stuff, and he loves you and all this stuff. Chances are that's going to be a huge turn off for you.
For sure.
She agreed, right? And it's like, no. It's like, absolutely not. Like, you would want a masculine male, right? Because two feminine beings just, they don't match up.
Yeah.
Huge turn off. Like, I there might be some girls right now that are listening to this and just completely disagree, but it's like you're lying to yourself.
You really are. I mean, pretty much any prior relationship I could think of, or anyone that actually worked, even for a short amount of time that I've experienced, definitely I wasn't the simp,
Yeah.
I wasn't chasing them. It was kind of like there's a balance to it.
Yeah.
And that's when it works, when there's a balance. If it's way too much on one side, it's not going to work. And that's just the truth.
I 100% agree. When I was younger and overweight and
you would probably go all in and be like, hey.
I was definitely like one of those sim guys, overextending myself because I want girls to like me. And I quickly learned once I kind of like changed my life, my physique, and the way my outlook, I learned that look, that's not what girls want. And then what I started to do is like, talk to them, but try not to show that I'm too interested.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what really was like. What happens is like they're like, why isn't he into me like these other guys?
Yeah,
right?
when you take a while to reply, when you straight up just don't respond, like that kind of like opens their eyes and I'm like, oh, okay, like something's different.
Exactly. It's like all these other guys want me.
It's because a lot of guys just throw themselves at women, and that's
exactly,
just normal,
exactly.
And then for them on the daily, I bet I can't even imagine what a girl's DM looks like, right? Like
exactly,
on the daily,
100%.
Yeah.
And so it's like she has all these other guys going after her. And the listeners, I'm pretty sure, if you're male, which is a lot of you are, I actually have a lot of female viewers, which is pretty cool. I like that. For the males listening, I'm pretty sure you always wondered, why do the girls like the bad guys or the guys that just don't care? Like she has all these guys that are willing to wife her up, so to speak, and she goes for the guy that doesn't want her. Like that's not a coincidence. It happens a lot.
No, it's not. Yeah,
it's because they're chasing masculinity. High emotion men are, they're feminine, and that's not what females want subconsciously.
Yeah,
deep in their nature. I think it's a trap.
Yeah, there's. It also could be like you said, maybe it's a new generation kind of thing because now with social media, it's so accessible. Like, people are so accessible, right? So guys can just simp on a chat, right? They could just straight up get on the message and like talk to them. Before they would have to talk to in person, right? And even then, I believe that still existed, just not to the level it does now. But where I was going with this is just, damn, I kind of forgot.
That's fine. I think it's a trap. I honestly do. I think that females are saying one thing, but they really want another thing.
Yeah.
It's like we've always complained for, forever. It's like, oh, girls say they want this, but then we have to read their mind.
Oh, I remember where I was going. Social media expectations. Like, oh, look at everything this guy does for me. And
oh, yeah. But bro,
exactly.
we see that everywhere. We see that in the movies, right?
Yeah.
It's like, who wins in the movies? The guy that overextends himself, that has the boombox radio over his head, that's out in the rain, right?
Like eventually at the end, he gets the girl because he was nice, like this and that. And like you see, like you said, you see it in movies, you see projections on social media. Like it's especially, we always talk about social media, right? But you see all this kind of stuff, and well, young men, we're impressionable, and obviously it's in our nature to try to find a woman.
Yeah.
So we see that, and that's exactly the trap we fall into, and that's what we do.
100%. Yeah. It's definitely a trap. If you're listening to this, don't fall into that trap. Don't be that guy.
And if you're there right now, bro, like one day you're gonna start realizing, okay, this is not working, and you're gonna change stuff up.
So I guess going back to the main topic of expressing your emotions, I think this is the part that men have to be careful with, is not being too emotional.
Pick and choose which vulnerabilities you show with your woman. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, especially if you're not in a relationship, because once you're in a relationship with them, and then once you go into marriage,
once you're married, it's totally different.
It gets different, because then there's some things that you do have to open up with, and you do have to be a little bit more emotional, but especially before the dating phase. Be careful about expressing too many emotions.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get knocked off of that hierarchy. Because women practice hypergamy. They like to date up. They like the guy who is competent and who is masculine, right? And if you're so going back to, well, I guess we can kind of segue this into the workforce.
Yeah.
Which is, if you are high in emotion, typically, and this is proven by studies, that men who are high in emotion, who are very agreeable, don't do too well in the workforce. They don't get the raises, they don't get the promotions, they don't get all this stuff. Fortunately or unfortunately for you, this is the way it is for the men in the world. Like that's something you have to contend with. You have to fight for the hierarchy. You have to be more masculine than the guy next to you. You have to be more competitive than the guy next to you. If not, you're just not gonna make it as far as the guy next to you. Going back to the relationship, that's what women see. In any field, women want the guy that's on top, right? The hypergamy. Generally speaking, I know girls right now are listening. They might be like, no, that's not true, whatever.
Yeah.
But, pick any field, right?
This is like, he's speaking like psychologically, like, like you're not necessarily thinking that's what you want, but it's in your nature to want that.
Yeah, and rightfully so. Like if I had a daughter, I would teach them this way, because if a male knows how to contend in the workforce this way and get on top, if they're the boss, right? And all girls, they like the boss.
Yeah,
let's
of course.
be honest, right? They like the boss because the guy, he has the status, he has the power, he has the wealth, and typically that's what a woman looks for. That's a good thing that women look for that. Imagine if all the girls chased the low lives. Like, what type of life would they? There would be no security. So a female, if I had a daughter, which I hope I do soon, because I'm having a little boy, I would teach her the same things. Like, look, you want a man who is masculine and who is resilient.
Yeah.
Because then I'm gonna feel comfortable with that man
Taking care of you.
taking care of you, taking care of your future children, right? So I think there's also a lot of shame that has been connected with that. Like, a lot of females like, oh no, like, I'm gonna look like a gold digger, right? And I think that's been demonized really bad. I don't think there are some girls that are very manipulative, right?
Yeah.
Because the very smart girls that know how to weave their way around and stuff, they could be gold diggers. But I think for the most part, women aren't gold diggers. They're just naturally bound to, like, I want a guy,
Status, wealth,
I want a guy who's competent, right? I think that's a safe word, competent.
Yeah. There you go.
But yeah, so
Normal women, not the damn Balzerian girls.
yeah, exactly. They actually start to devalue themselves.
Yeah,
That's another
exactly.
conversation,
Yeah.
but yeah, 100%. Listen, guys, are y'all tired of being fat and unhealthy? Look, I feel you. I've struggled with weight loss for a majority of my life, but I recently lost 32 pounds. I want to tell y'all exactly how I did it. I changed my diet. I ate a little bit healthier. I know how hard that can be with so much convenient fast food restaurants, convenient grab and go foods that you can just pick up and go. But I want to show y'all a way where y'all can stay convenient and eat a bit healthier. That's why I want to tell y'all about my good friends at Primitive Eats. It's a local, homegrown, small business that is a meal prep company. And they are derived off the paleo diet. Really quickly, paleo is just a natural way of eating food. Taking out simple carbs, sticking to the earth. Okay? It is very good for you. It's very healthy for you. And you can support a local small business. It's always great. So if you're in the Los Fresnos, Brownsville, or Harlingen, San Benito area, go check them out. They have plans where you can buy for the full week. They will deliver it for you. Quick, easy, and go. And it's super delicious. They support the podcast. I support them. Go check them out. And if you don't want to get their meal plan, listen, check out their Instagram. That is Primitive Eats 90. I'm going to leave it in the description. If you're not going to follow them for the meal preps, follow them for their memes, because their memes are hilarious. Also, little quick fun fact, they do raffles, which I recently won concert tickets on their page. True story. Go check them out. I support Primitive Eats. Primitive Eats supports the podcast, and we love them. Go check them out. So I'm trying to connect the two from workforce and relationship. Is like, women will go for the person that are on top of the hierarchy. So if you're high in emotion, that's a feminine trait, you will not be successful in the workforce. Therefore, you won't be that person. You won't have as many options as the guy above you.
Yeah.
Right? Because here's the truth. Women desire the guys that have a lot of options, which are the guys that are at the top, right? The hypergamy, the hierarchy.
Unfortunately for them, sometimes it comes with consequences.
Exactly. Guys cheating on them. So it's ironic because they want the guy with all the options, but they don't want them to exercise those options.
Yeah.
Right.
But what do you expect them to do, man?
It's
tricky. It's tricky.
It gets tricky. But anyways.
Case by case.
Yeah, case by case, for sure. But yeah, I think that a man in the workforce is very important for them to be non-agreeable, resilient, and that's something that I've learned recently because I've been reading quite a few books, and I'm picking another one up actually, and it teaches a lot about that, learning how to contend in the workspace and how to be successful in that.
I mean, I would just say to people, like, look around you, like people you know, your friend group, and look at the people that look at the men, your guy friends or whatever, the men in your lives that you see that are most emotional. Like, and where are they? Like, how are they doing?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there's an anomaly that one's successful, but usually from people that I know that I've seen, like, for no reason break down and cry or something like that, like, they're not doing well, or there's something's not completely there.
100%.
And it's because now when you start looking back at it, those are kind of like little red flags. If, like, even when they drink, like, they drink and then they start getting emotional. That's definitely a red flag. Now that I'm looking back, like, at the moment, I'd be like, oh, they're drunk, whatever, give them a pass. But now looking back, it's like, that's not really something you can just forgive, or not forgive, right? Because maybe they don't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
But it's not something you could just overlook.
Especially for males.
Especially for males, because it's like just a little bit of alcohol makes you lose total self-control. Mm-hmm. Like, are you stable? Are you? Yeah. Something's wrong with you. That's not how normal people act under the influence of alcohol.
Yeah, low tolerance.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, and that bleeds into the relationships, that bleeds into the workforce, and that bleeds into your social life, man. Like, all your entire life is just, and the thing is, like, everyone feels these certain emotions. It's just your behavior. Mm-hmm. Like, can you control yourself from acting on these emotions?
100%. I think that has a lot to do with maturity. I kind of created my own definition of maturity.
Right. Shoot.
What I think it is. I think maturity is the capability to disconnect your emotions from your actions.
For sure.
And this falls on the umbrella of that, but I think that it also more specifically ties into, do you allow other people's words about you dictate your emotions? You need to disconnect that. What some people think about you, if somebody's words make you feel unhealthy, like if they really anger you to the point where you just can't, you're stressed out, I believe you need to build maturity within yourself and learn, that should not bother me this much.
Yeah. It's really, immaturity is when you start, to me, maturity is when you stop blaming others and you blame yourself.
Yes.
To me, personally, you take accountability for everything bad that happens in your life, because everything bad that happens in your life, at some, like, an outside force caused it, but you put yourself in that situation. Yeah. You put yourself there. Right?
I think one of the biggest struggles for people is learning how to, even because there are some situations where it's like, well, that wasn't my fault. I guarantee you, if you thought long enough and far back enough, you could probably find something that you did that you could have done better that resulted into this.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't like to look that deep. They look on the surface because it's more convenient for them.
It's really easy to just start blaming other people. Really easy. And, like, I see it all the time, man. Like, I see it at work. I see it in social circles, like, people that are like, that clearly did something wrong. Mm. And they're like, no, I didn't do it. It's because of this, and that, this person. That is lack of maturity. That is, to me, that's being emotional too. Yeah. Because it's like, well, just own up to it, bro. Like, there's nothing wrong with it.
I have a question for you, and you're probably gonna have to, like, scan through, like, your conversations throughout your day. But for me, like, when I come across a male when I'm working or when I'm just out in public and they don't talk to me, there's, like, a certain level of respect there that I think, like, oh, this guy's probably not someone who, like, wants to be messed with, or like I don't want to mess with this guy, in a sense, right? Not that I'm scared of him. I just, we don't want to mess with this guy. But as soon as that person opens up, that barrier kind of just crumbles, and you're like, oh. And especially if it's somebody that's super vocal about how they feel. I have somebody at work that was, like, very quiet, and I was just like, dang, this guy's probably, like, super non-agreeable, like, don't mess with that guy.
Yeah.
One day he just started talking to me like crazy about his life and everything like that. I lost, like, total, like, all that respect and that, like, stay away from this guy.
Yeah.
Just totally went out the window. I was like, dang, this guy's, like, extremely vulnerable, just like everybody, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, once you voice it out, that power is gone. Like, that whole, like,
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And I think of at work right now, there's someone higher up, and that I just see like they don't take accountability for when things are messed up. That's obviously like within their duties, right? And so it's like it's you do start losing respect for that person, because it's like they get emotional about like, oh, I just think that person's not doing their job right.
Yeah.
Like it's not. It's like, dude, like if you take accountability for it, you'll gain more respect, and maybe others around you respect you more enough to actually do what you want, right?
And it's interesting too, because I try to exploit this whole thing since I kind of know what's going on. So like I know that my,
it's a cheat code.
For instance, like my boss, right?
Yeah.
He obviously is on top of the hierarchy of me. So like I obviously need to respect him to a certain level more than the guys that are on the same level as I am, right?
For sure. Yeah.
And so what I try to do is I slowly but surely try to break that barrier of like, because he comes in, he's serious, blah blah blah, right? Once you like break that and start to like joke with him, and you start to like talk about things not related to work, personal stuff, he starts to like, I guess in like mentally you start to level the playing field.
Yeah.
And I did this one time, and I told my wife, because I expected someone to, work with me. This was in the past. And I was like, what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to like take them out of their element, because I know that they're very competent in this job, right? So I'm going to try to shift the conversation away from the job and something that I'm more comfortable with. And so what I did, I started talking about the podcast, and I started to talk about working out, things that I was very familiar with, having conversations with random people. And what ended up happening at the end of the conversation was this guy was more interested in me than I was him. And so it was like I kind of leveled it out.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if let's say I tried to do that and he was super like not having it, strictly business, it's like,
what can you do? Yeah.
What can you do? This guy is there, and you know what I mean? So I think that's a good example of, in that case, the person that was on the hierarchy, if they allow their emotions into that conversation, they lose that power in a sense.
For sure.
I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why like in the military, it's called fraternization when an officer talks to like someone that's enlisted, right? Mm-hmm. Someone that's enlisted just joined out of like high school, right? Someone that's an officer, they joined out of college, so they're expected to like take a more leadership role. And so it's called fraternization if an officer like hangs out with you. That's not supposed to happen.
Oh.
Because of what you just said.
Okay.
You bring him down to your level. And I did have an officer, he's a cool dude, man, and he definitely came down to our level, right? And we kind of like right. It wasn't, nothing bad came out of it, right? But it's like you do lose that like, oh, he can like mess up my life right now.
Yeah.
Because obviously he kind of feels like one of the guys,
Yeah.
And that's exactly what they're trying to avoid. So that's what they do that for. And not only with officers enlisted, but there's senior enlisted, and then like the regular guys that just come in, and the guys have been in for a long time. There's that dynamic too. Mm-hmm. And that's what it's supposed to do. So like there's rules written in like militaries all over the world to combat that.
Yeah, okay.
Because that's bad.
So I'm not wrong.
No, you're not wrong. There's guidelines in place to stop that, because that is dangerous.
Yeah. You see, that's crazy, because like that's subconscious in my head, right? And
not everyone thinks like that. No.
What I find very interesting. So when I read the Jordan Peterson book, which I read twice, what I found the most fascinating about that book in particular was that I would read through it, and the things that I was thinking subconsciously kind of connected. Like it was like sparks, like, oh, I've always thought that way.
Yeah.
But I can never put it into words, right? And so like right now, when I was trying to put, that whole, that whole scenario together, you just said it far better than I did, because you literally lived through it in the military.
Through an actual hierarchy. Yeah.
Exactly.
That was structured.
Exactly, and try to combat that. But I would just think about it.
But it would still happen.
Oh, yes.
Oh, for sure.
Well, obviously, yeah.
Yeah, it would still happen where there was someone like ranked above you, but you were still able to garner more respect.
Yeah, but you see, that's your sergeant or the guy above you allowing his emotions to take over, right? So if he was more resilient and he took his job a little bit more serious.
To me, it all goes back down to accountability, man.
Yeah.
I think that being accountable not being accountable to me is emotional.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, to me, that's maturity. Like just be accountable and people around you are going to respect you. Just watch.
100%.
Just watch. Like that's, to me, that's the biggest thing.
Let's talk about innovation a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that there's definitely a burden for performance on male, and there's very high resilient social expectations for males to perform.
For sure.
There's no question about that. And a lot of people will, and my wife always tells me, because she runs TikToks and she sends me TikToks, and like there's girls like, ladies, when your man's been out working all day, make sure to love and care for him, because you know, and then there's truth to that, right? But it's important to know that don't like if a guy is working hard, right, which a lot of men do, thank God, because if not we wouldn't have a functioning world. Don't like incentivize it, but don't make it seem like he shouldn't be doing that. I believe, right?
No, that's true.
And this is what I mean, because if we didn't function like that, we wouldn't be at the place that we're at right now, as far as, you know, as humans, as you know, as we've evolved.
Yeah.
Innovation wouldn't have got to where we're at right now if it wasn't for these high expectations of male. America wouldn't be structured the way it is, with, you know, skyscrapers and this and then that. And I mean, the light, we wake up and we kind of like just go through the motions, but there's so many things that went to structuring this that we don't see, right? There's lights when we're driving, right? Those lights just didn't appear. There's guys that had to go out there and work, whether it was hot, cold, raining, whatever it is.
And some day it rains so hard that one falls down, like a tower.
Exactly.
Someone's got to go fix that.
Somebody's got to go fix that. And thank God that there's these high expectations.
And they do it.
Exactly. And they have to.
That must suck.
Yeah, 100%. And here's the thing, is like, can a generation, or let's just say all men were very high in emotion and very feminine, would a lot of these things get done? I don't think so.
No.
I think that, I don't think.
Yeah, you need men that could take criticism. You need men that could take accountability, and you need men. All of that pushes us forward.
100%.
If everyone would get upset whenever someone told someone something that they didn't like, or things wouldn't get done, man, because people would just throw their hands up and quit or not. I mean, and that's what we're kind of seeing, like more and more of that. Like, while I was in the military, like as soon as I was starting to get out, you would start hear rumblings of like this newer generation. Like you can't be as hard as them, because then they quit. And I saw that when I was in, and we were doing like 2 months of basic training. It's not even that hard, man. Like it's really not. Like, just be present, show up on time, like wake up on time, don't be lazy, and you'll get through it easy. But during that time, there's guys that are like, you know what, I can't take it. I get too angry when they tell me stuff. Yeah. And so they fall out, and guess what? They were just a waste of money. They were wasted the government's money. Yeah. Because instead of training, they're just sitting there. It's like, who does that benefit? No one. Yeah. No one.
100%.
You need a team. You need cohesion.
I know somebody personally that I talked to my friend from Cali I have conversations about this person to him, and this person, it's very obvious to see that they try to flex. It's like a toxic masculinity thing. They try to flaunt their wealth. They try to flaunt their masculinity that really isn't there, and they do it by, you know, look at my truck, or look at my car, look at my jewelry, look
superficial
at
stuff.
Look at my guns, and look at this and look at that. And males that have awareness, like alpha males and males in high masculinity, they can see that, and they know, like,
100%.
It's like, right, you know, and it's I don't know if women can read that, but I know for sure men are able to read that. When guys are like, look at me, it's just like, I talked about this in one of my podcasts, respect goes unspoken. Yeah. If you have to yell and say, oh, respect me, chances are you don't.
Or you try to put someone down for...
Exactly, yeah. Right? Like chances are you don't deserve the respect. You're not in that position, and you're not on top of that hierarchy for a reason.
You're trying to elevate yourself to that position.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. 100%, I agree.
Yeah. I do think that also there's a lot of... because of the whole demonization of a masculine male, there is a lot of victimhood that comes into that, where it's like, oh, well, it's just like I didn't come from where he came from, so like how can you blame me? And it's just like the game isn't fair, the hierarchy isn't fair, right? It's like, yeah, I mean,
but at the end of the day, it doesn't
matter.
It didn't change anything.
You complaining is not going
to
change much.
I don't do well with complainers, bro. Hey, man, it gets old quick.
Yeah, Carlos and I were talking about it the other day. It's like, dude, when you're around somebody who complains, it just
it's draining.
It brings your morale down.
It's draining.
Bad. It's just like, dude, if you don't like this job, if you don't
they
like
say
this,
one bad apple ruins a batch, right?
Yeah, it's just like, just get out. Just get out of the situation. Yeah, I agree.
Oh yeah, man. I remember while being in the military, there's so much guys that just complain the whole time and then to stay in. I'm like, what? I can't take you seriously, man. Like, so can you really do?
Yeah. So I guess what we can kind of end it off on is just really highlighting the whole suicide thing. Like, how can we combat that, and what do we think is a good solution for that? I do think that.
Do you believe in therapy?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think that you can avoid therapy if you're able to educate yourself and learn how to these avenues of learning how to express yourself with different people.
Yeah.
But if it needs to get there, go for it. Yeah, I believe in that. I think therapy can teach people a lot of stuff about themselves.
It's interesting. I find that a lot of people. I've had people just open up to me randomly, right? Mm-hmm. And it's usually someone I don't really know that well. Oh, and I always find that really interesting. How they're like, all of a sudden they're like, can we just talk? I'm like, okay, sure.
Yeah.
And it's probably happened to you too.
Yeah, well, I talked a little bit about
that. So like that's always kind of interesting to me. How do you get to that point?
Yeah, that's learning how to, because that person probably doesn't want to express themselves
to anyone they know, like
close,
that,
because you got to be careful with that, because they can use that as ammunition.
Comes with consequences.
It definitely does.
Not just ammunition, but also like the way they look at you, the way they see you. And if you tell someone that's just a passerby, that has nothing to do with anything in your life, maybe it's just safer. I guess that's what a therapist is for, right? But I didn't charge $100 for the hour.
No, 100%. Because there is toxic masculinity, right? Where a guy's like, no, like, I'm not gonna go to a therapist. Like, what does that guy know, right? And there is that side where guys are just way too prideful, way too egotistic, and they don't want to tell anybody anything. There's some bad to that too, right? Like, somebody that just hoards everything in, that could be very detrimental to yourself, most importantly to yourself and to your health, but also to your family, your kids, right? If you don't know how to express yourself, you don't know how to.
Yeah, man, suicide's scary. I see it like as a disease, and it spreads. I mean, being, I've talked about some military experiences, right? Being in the military, like, I knew a good amount of guys, and it would just happen, man. It just kept going.
To me, it just seems sad. So surreal.
Sad.
It's like, I could never in my life picture even the idea of me wanting to out myself.
Yeah, man.
To me, right? And so when somebody says that they want to, somebody recently came and
expressed that, yeah.
Had a conversation with, which was like, in the moment, I was like, oh, snap. Like, this is real, right? And, like, I'm put in this position where I need to, like, I need to speak up. And it was tough, but...
It's never an easy conversation.
It's never an easy conversation, but I've never been in that personally, and I just find it wild that some people go to that place, and it's scary, man.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and sometimes you don't even see it, man. As I was getting out of the military, there was two people that, like, I remember them vividly, because right after I left, they killed themselves. And it's insane, because one of the last person I talked to leaving the base, like a month after I left, committed murder-suicide. Murdered his wife and killed himself.
No way.
The guy would give us presentations on life after the army. And he would talk in detail about his wife, his social life. So, like, I kind of knew what the guy had going on, right? And it's just surreal seeing the headline like a month later, and you're just like, wow, like you really have no. And the thing is, like, on these bases, there's so much so much support, right? But at the end of the day, men, for some reason or the other, they just don't reach out. And it's unfortunate. Like you said, I believe like we shouldn't be emotional with trivial things, right? But if something's burning you that bad, like we've said on this here on this podcast already, if something's burning you that bad to the core, like you need to say something or have someone you can confide in, man.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I have my friend, so like, I think it's very important that don't even let it get to that
exactly
point. Like, don't let it get that far. Like, try to surround yourself with people that you're able to express stuff. Like my buddy and I, we talk about some very vulnerable stuff that I think that I wouldn't be able to talk to with anybody, right? And he does the same, and that's such a relief to me that I know that because like I told him before, I was like, dude, if I lost you, if I lost my wife, like, dude, that would make me so sad because those are the two people that I have super deep conversations with.
For sure.
And it makes me feel fulfilled. And with that, I guess they like can conclude this whole conversation in the podcast. I think that men should express their emotions, but they need to learn how to do it very strategically. But I do think that men need to learn how to reserve their masculinity. And in doing that, you do need to be resilient, and you can't be emotional. You can't be overly emotional. So I know it's a very like complicated answer, but it's a complicated question too.
Yep.
So should men be able to express their emotions? I think
absolutely
yes, but for the most part, no. Like you need to be very smart about how you do it, because what's going to end up happening is your value in life will go down if you're a very high emotional man, because you're going to be a feminine man, and this is not a feminine man world. This is a masculine man world, and that's the way it's going to be, and you need to learn how to contend with that, and that's how I truly feel.
Yep. Remember, you can control your behavior. You may not be able to control your emotions, but you can control how you react to it, and take accountability for your actions, man. If you do act out on it, right? But like I said, control your behavior, and that goes a long way. It goes a long way. Don't break down and cry in front of just anyone, man.
Oh yeah,
that's definitely not good. It's a red flag.
100%. Do you want to say anything else before we kind of?
No, sir. I think we kind of had a good one here.
I think it was a great conversation. Let us know what y'all thought in the comments below. If you're listening on Spotify, hit us up on Instagram on what you thought about this topic. I'm very curious. I think this was a great conversation. Next week, I'll talk to you about when you can come back. But we're going to be talking about the demonization on having kids. That's an important one. I know a lot of y'all, the people that voted for that topic, really wanted that. Y'all were sending me messages, and I appreciate y'all.
Definitely going to do it. Definitely.
Yeah. So we're going to try to do that for y'all. I will start doing polls on Instagram, so if you're not following, go ahead and follow us. It's The Real Common Podcast. As always, for the new listeners, if you enjoyed the podcast, first of all, on whatever platform you're using, share with just one person. I promise you, if you enjoyed it, chances are somebody else is going to enjoy it as well, and they might learn something. But the podcast for the new listeners is on YouTube, Spotify, and almost anywhere else that you can find your podcast. The video version is on YouTube. And with that being said, thanks, bro. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for all the listeners, and we'll catch y'all next time. Peace.
On the track.